Welcome to the Michigan Football Junkies podcast. I'm Jeremy Miller, and this is my first episode. I'm a long-time Michigan fan since I was a little kid. I've watched just about every single game since then. I've been pretty good at projecting players to the next level between high school to college and from college to pros. Had a fantasy football podcast with my best friend for a couple years. Recorded over 100 episodes, and that was the Football Junkies podcast. And it just became too much for one person to try and cover 32 teams worth of players in fantasy football. You know, just between the two of us, we didn't have enough time. So I decided to do one team, and why not go with the first love, which is Michigan football. So I am doing this, and I'm going to cover pretty much the pre and post game. I will cover projecting recruits to Michigan, just the committed recruits. I'm not going to figure out who's going to commit, who's going to come, all that. You want to know that? Follow Sam Webb, follow Chris Ballas. Those are the guys that you want for that. Those are the kings of recruiting. But as far as, I'll just do the projections, and we'll talk some Michigan football, and we'll also talk some Michigan players that are going to be draft eligible and how I think that they're going to go as far as projecting to the NFL. But we're going to kick off a few different things today. We're going to talk a little bit about Harbaugh and the defensive coordinator position that's open. And then we're going to get into a 3-part series. Today will be part 1 into the 2022 recruiting class. So with Harbaugh, word has it right now that it's pretty much, they've had several different people say that the Raiders are pretty much out with Harbaugh. I don't believe that. I think that's maybe a few of their candidates are, but I do not think that that's over with the Raiders. With the recent hire of their GM, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, yeah, that's a mouthful. From what everybody says, this guy's he's going to be a good GM. Like, he's really sharp. He checks every box you want in a guy running your program. And he worked with Jim in San Francisco for a few years when they were there. So this is a guy who knows Jim. From what I understand, or at least from what I've been able to find, I don't believe he is this big influence in Jim's life. He's not really close with Jim, but I think that just their prior relationship, and as if they've had some good experience, because I can't find anything out there talking about their experience together in San Francisco. Obviously, Jim had a problem with Trent Baalke, so there was that, but it sounds like they actually had an okay relationship. I just don't know how close they became in that short amount of time. But from what everybody is reporting, it sounds like Jim is still favorited to stay at Michigan, but the Vikings and the Raiders are the main two possibilities for the NFL. I'd still set it as a 70-30 stays at Michigan, 70% being the stays at Michigan. And, this is the 29th of January, so anything could happen just because we never really know. And Harbaugh is going to do what he needs to do. Now, the biggest thing is going to be whether Michigan is going to fully commit to the football team, and that is fixing some things with transfers where you don't lose half of your credits or more. Not only that, but also maybe committing a little bit more into NIL as far as letting the boosters or anybody who wants to help create a slush fund a la Texas A&M. Ohio State is doing it now, and this is going to be a program, whether it's other businesses, boosters, even fans can contribute to this. There is going to be some regulations that come down at one point. I just don't think it's going to be for a little while. You're going to start to see some probably at the end of 2022, or at least some ideas to go to the competition committee on what they believe should be regulated and not regulated. So there are a few things there. And then not to mention having a few more exceptions to admissions just to get maybe a few more talented players in at Michigan. There are a few things that Harbaugh would like, as well as a higher pay for his assistants. I do not believe that Harbaugh is wanting to leave because of pay. He is not doing this because he's trying to hold Ward Manuel and the school over a barrel and saying, hey, you're going to pay me $15 million a year. He gave away, I think, a little over $3 million last year of his salary, of his bonuses that he would have been receiving for the fantastic year that they had, to other staff members that had to take pay cuts. So he is obviously extremely generous. This is not about money. He has wealth beyond his years, his kids' years, and their years. So I don't believe this is about money, but make no mistake, he didn't like the fact that he had to take a pay cut last year. But in my opinion, I think he's going to be staying at Michigan, but anything could happen. And I realize I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. It's just the way it is. There's little pieces here and there between the courtesy card that his wife went and traded in and got a new one. Was only available for Michigan coaching staff, obviously spouses. So she went and picked that out. I don't think that you're going to be doing that unless you're planning on staying. Now, could that still happen? Sure. Jim's he's a wealthy guy. He can always say, hey, look, here's some money that you had to pay for blah, 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 and move on with life. But on to defensive coordinator, because obviously we lost Mike Macdonald this past week. He came from the Raiders, highly recommended from his brother John, and after they decided to terminate Wink Martindale, which was the defensive coordinator for the Ravens last year, he interviewed a few people, Mike Macdonald being one of them, and decided to offer Mike Macdonald to come back and be the defensive coordinator for the Ravens. So he's doing that, and now we need to find another one. Now, we have a few different people that are possible candidates, and right now we're kind of just working off of people with connections to Harbaugh. Sam Webb reported that Jim Harbaugh did reach out to Larry Foote, who is former Michigan player. Larry Foote, linebacker, played in the NFL for, I think, 12 years. He's been coaching for several years in the NFL. Last 3, he's been with Tampa. So he's won a Super Bowl, took him back to the divisional round of the playoffs. And from what everybody said, he is on the rise. And Sam Webb even said this, home run hire if they get him. So there's that. You have Jesse Minter, who, if you remember last year when we were looking for a defensive coordinator, they talked about some names that John had offered his brother Jim for, defensive coordinator. And one of them being Mike Macdonald. He was the number 1 coach on that list. The number 2 name on that list was Jesse Minter. Now, Jesse Minter, there are a couple things that go along with this. He worked with John Harbaugh for a couple seasons. He worked his way up into the DB coach, and then he took the defensive coordinator job at Vanderbilt this past season. The other nice thing is Minter actually has a connection with Mike Elston. Minter started his coaching career in Cincinnati under Brian Kelly, which Mike Elston was also there, and he coached there for 3 seasons. He had 1 season as an intern, 2 as a grad assistant, and then moved up pretty quickly, and then obviously jumped to the Ravens as a DB or as a defensive assistant, and then took on the defensive back position as a positional coach. So there is that one. The other one is a little bit of a blast from the not too long of a past. Chris Partridge, the former New Jersey high school head coach, came to Michigan, moved up the ranks very quickly, got offered by Alabama to come coach the linebackers there. He ended up turning it down, stayed at Michigan, went to Ole Miss for the past 2 seasons, where he's been a co-defensive coordinator. Now, they have been working on this kind of odd 3-2-6 defense with Ole Miss, but I think just having some different experiences out there helps Chris Partridge, because you got to remember, he has not been coaching college that long, but you'd want to talk about a guy on the rise. That's Chris Partridge. Huge recruiter as well. So we could get a big-time recruiter, somebody that is comfortable with Michigan as well as Jim Harbaugh, and so there's a lot of different things here that Jim's going to have to look through. But if you see him hire a defensive coordinator, I think that moves my percentage all the way up to 90+% on whether Jim Harbaugh is going to stay. No defensive coordinator is going to come to Michigan not knowing if the head coach is even going to be there in another month. It's just not going to happen. I believe the same kind of thing happened with Mike Elston, that he probably told him, say, look, 90-10. Now, I don't know this. This is just me guessing. Complete guess. I just doubt that Mike Elston would want to come back under the circumstance that he may not have a job in 2 months because the new head coach comes in and decides he wants a different D-line coach. He wants, he's already got somebody in mind for defensive coordinator and so on and so forth. So, Elston would be out. It just doesn't seem right. I like Chris Partridge. I think that would be a big-time hire for Michigan, at least for a couple years until he gets some head coaching offers. Hopefully we find out more about this very soon. And I had to re-record the opening for this podcast because some more news just comes out. Longtime NFL great and former Michigan quarterback Tom Brady retires. After 22 seasons in the NFL, he retires as the very best quarterback in NFL history. It's not close. I was always a huge Joe Montana fan. You can name the quarterback. It really doesn't matter. Tom Brady did it with the Patriots in cold, snowy, windy weather versus in a dome in warm weather. He did it with Troy Brown, Wes Welker, Julian Edelman. These are the guys that Tom Brady was mainly throwing to. Yeah, he had Moss for, 2 years? This is not the same. Tom Brady he was just always so calm and cool back there in the pocket. He saw the field. He didn't have a chip on his shoulder. He had cases of ruffles and lays on his shoulders. That was the best part about Tom, is he had this hunger and drive to be better and to beat everybody and to show and prove to everybody, you effed up when you passed on me. A quarterback coming out of Michigan, end of the 5th round, and he becomes the greatest quarterback in NFL history. Good luck to you, Tom. All of us Michigan fans are rooting for you, and we'd love to see what you do next. So let's go ahead and dive right into our recruits. First one up is offensive tackle Connor Jones. He's a 3-star tackle. He's out of a 3-star tackle, he has everything you want. He's tall, he's long, 6'7", 285 pounds. I believe he could play the right or the left. He is going to have to bulk up, get a little bit more strength. He's going to need to learn learn a lot, obviously. I think the very earliest he could play is you're probably looking at 2023 at the very earliest, but most likely 2024. He's going to have to probably drop a little bit of bad weight, put on good weight. One of the things he has run blocking wise, he'll play a little bit too high, but you do that a lot of times in high school because you don't need to focus on technique and stuff as much because 6'7", 285, you don't find a lot of those guys. You don't find a lot of players in high school that can match up against a player like that and beat them in the run game. So he does have that, but he does have pretty decent feet for pulling, for, even just getting out into the next level. You'll even see him do a couple different things where he'll get right up to that linebacker or safety, and instead of reaching out trying to grab onto him, he takes these nice little short steps so that way he doesn't miss on his man, and then you'll see a nice violent hand strike. And if you look on the senior highlight videos that I put up on my YouTube page, Football Junkies, then you'll see the play. It's one of the first few, I believe, when the video starts, where he gets that second level just that violent hand strike against safety, and this guy looked like he got hit by a car. I mean, it was just bad. Pass blocking wise, he does have a nice kick step. He slides back for those speed rushers, but this is where you don't see that same patience he has on that run block, getting that next level before the hand strike. This is where he doesn't have that patience and he reaches. Well, you don't want to have that. You get out over your toes. You don't have the same balance or strong base that you had before. I do like Connor Jones' tackle prospect for what he can be 2 years from now, maybe 3. I could see him playing all the way up to about anywhere between 320 and 340. Reminds me a little bit of let's say a less aggressive Taylor Lewan. He doesn't have that same violent urge to get those personal foul penalties like Taylor would. But that's not a bad thing or a good thing. You just have to control it. Next up, we have Alex Orji. He's quarterback out of Texas, 3-star, number 28 overall as far as quarterbacks. He's 6'3", 225 pounds. The guy is just a gym junkie. He's got a 39-inch vertical, benches 275, squats 550. This is a physical specimen as a quarterback. He's big, strong, has a great frame, runs well. They don't have his timed speed anywhere. I'm guessing mid 4.5s. That's just watching him on film and trying to figure out about what he runs. He has pretty quick feet. He runs with power, which seems a little strange for a quarterback, but in high school, being his size, it makes sense. That's going to be something that you're going to want to limit him doing at Michigan as much, putting his head down and getting those big hits. It's one thing at the high school level. It's a whole nother animal in the Big Ten or SEC or someplace else. As far as his throwing, he has got a huge arm, can throw it 60 yards downfield, just a flick of a wrist. Nice deep, he's got a great deep ball. He puts tons of air underneath it. Reminds me a little bit of like a Jeff Blake type ball, going all the way back to the Cincinnati Bengals back then. So I like that in his game. He does need to work on some mechanics. He can get inaccurate on the short and intermediate routes, and you do see him kind of sink down before he throws, and you don't want that because you're taking away from that 6'3" frame. If you wanted a 5'10" quarterback, that's fine, but don't make yourself 5'10" by squatting down as you throw. But overall, I like Alex a lot. I think that having a player with his possibilities as a player, it could be huge as a quarterback. I could see him playing several other positions, but I really do hope that he works out as a quarterback because, he is just, the possibilities are almost endless with him. But next up, you have Miles Pollard. He's a defensive back. He's a 3-star, number 53 overall as a cornerback, 6'2", 185. I can see Miles playing safety or corner. I kind of prefer Miles to be a safety, mainly because he doesn't have great top-end speed. That's a guy that when I watched him in some camps and he'd be matched up one-on-one with a wide receiver, if they had some pretty decent speed, he'd get ate up on those deep routes. You see that speed instantly, which is really surprising because the rest of his game is so good. But he plays the run very well. I think he's a really good tackler, and he can lay the wood to somebody. But he gets off blocks, I think, very easily, and other times he just flat out goes around the block and makes a tackle. He kind of reminds me of a picture of Dax Hill. Didn't have the top end speed that he does. That's kind of Miles Pollard. The rest of his game is like on point. You can see in these short and intermediate routes that he can get in and out of his breaks fairly well. He does have a problem with some zone coverage, but that could have just been the limited coverage that you do see. So I'm actually kind of surprised he was ranked where he is. They have him as only a 3-star in the 247 composite. The only thing that holds Miles back to me is the top end speed. So I actually predicted, before I even looked at him, just watching his film, this guy he's probably a top 150 guy. He's probably right there, 140, 160, somewhere around there. Nope, a 3-star. I was kind of shocked. So I think we got a real nice player in Miles. Man, I could see him playing. I could even see him playing next year. That's how good I think Miles Pollard is, and how well he could play his role, which I could see him playing nickel. I could see him playing a little bit of safety. So this is a guy that I think Michigan found a player that a lot of places missed on just looking at the ranking alone. Next up, you have Derek Moore, the big D end. He came out of Baltimore, and his high school team was just stacked. They were one of the best teams in the nation. Derek Moore went down to the Army All-American game. I believe he had MVP honors with 2 sacks. Had another one that got called back on a penalty. Plays the run very well overall. Gets off the block. I even saw it several different times where he'll hold the offensive lineman to one side while positioning himself to make the play on the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, whoever's carrying the ball out of the backfield. So I did see him actually chase several plays down from behind where the running back got past the line of scrimmage. He gets off the block, turns, and starts running. Running back kind of stops, goes this way, goes that way, and as he's trying to make a move, boom, here comes Derek Moore from behind. The only thing that kind of surprised me out of all that was running back held onto the ball on, I think, every one of those. And you see so many different times, you get a big D lineman coming in from behind, hitting that little running back, and you see that ball squirt loose a lot. So I really do like Derek Moore in that aspect. But he's going to be a pass rusher for Michigan. He mainly played with his hand in the dirt for in high school, but he's gonna be a stand-up rush edge. I see this as an advantage for him. He's going to have more opportunity to get around the offensive lineman. He's mainly just used power and kind of this shoulder dip to get past the line. The problem I see is he needs to use his hands more, and he could be a really good pass rusher at that point because he gets off the ball quick. That was the difference between Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo. I think Ojabo is more physically talented of a pass rusher, but Aiden is just so ferocious with his power, his hands. But that first step is killer because he was off the ball so much faster than David Ojabo. That's something that you see Derek Moore has. He does have that quick first step. He does have that great instinct to start moving before the ball is actually snapped, so that way you seem so much quicker. So I really do like Derek Moore. He's a 4-star talent. I'm thinking you could see him situationally in 2022, possibly. We lost two big time pass rushers. I know Jalen Harrell's been playing well, and they have a few other guys there, but I would not be shocked to see Derek Moore situationally in 2022. But on to the next one. Linebacker Micah Pollard. No, he is not related to Miles. They just have the same last name. He's 6'3", a little over 200 pounds, 3-star linebacker. He runs the ball well, taking really good angles. He has what looks like to be pretty good speed for a linebacker. He's not Devin Bush, but he has really good speed. The thing that concerns me about Micah is how he gets off the block. We're more than likely going to stay in a 3-4, considering we were there last year. Well, they said it was a 3-4, but it was mainly like a 2-4-5 type defense. There was only two defensive linemen with their hand in the dirt, and then you had Aiden and Ajabo as stand-up rush ends with two middle linebackers, and then you had 5 defensive backs. This year, I'm not quite sure if that's going to be the same. We're not sure what defensive coordinator we're going to have, but it's important because if you're using your linebackers in a 3-4, they're going to have to be able to get off blocks more so than in a 4-3 because you don't have extra defensive linemen there to hold your offensive linemen down. So with Micah, you'll see him kind of get his hands caught up. He'll get one free pull on the offensive lineman pulling across his body to rip the other one out. You're not going to be able to do that in college. He's gonna have to learn some better techniques with that to get his hands up earlier, to try and get around the player, get around that offensive lineman so he can't get his hands on him and ragdoll. I mean, that's just something that's going to happen with offensive linemen. They're always so much bigger, so much stronger than a linebacker, and you can't let them get to your body. In pass defense, I think Micah's a very good blitzer. He has a really great burst and great reaction to the snap. Stunted very well in high school, and he has really good change of direction ability, which is why I think he's going to be able to fix some of the problems he has in coverage. You don't see a lot of it, but some of the ones that he did, it didn't look real natural. But the funny thing is, he looks like just a tall safety. That's kind of how slender his frame is. But I think he's stronger than he looks. I think he's faster than he looks. And this is another player that I just think that Michigan hit on a lot of players that can do more than what their ranking suggests they'll be able to in the future. On to the next one, you have Amarion Walker. He was an athlete. He played wide receiver and cornerback, 6'4", 175 pounds, so they say. Does not look like it. I think he's even more slender than that. He may be in the 160s. He does run a 4.4. He moves very well, very fluid. He's got a 38-inch vertical. He runs the 100 meters in 10.8. So he's very fluid in all of his movements. He has very good speed. The only thing that he needs to really add some weight and get some experience. It looks like he's still pretty raw as a wide receiver. His coach did say that he's catching about 100 balls a day from the jugs machine, which I love. I love to hear that, to have that drive to get better, that want to, and that's huge. I don't think he's going to play cornerback if he's 6'4". You don't see that often. If anything, it'd be as a safety. But even with that in mind, I really think Amarion Walker is going to be a wide receiver when he walks into Michigan, and when he leaves Michigan, he's still going to be a wide receiver. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Ty Streets is the guy that I think he reminds me of the most. You did see him in some camp settings where he was one-on-one with a cornerback, defensive back, doesn't matter, and he really fought the ball. I don't know if he was having trouble picking the ball up after the quarterback threw it in these camps. You have different quarterbacks throwing the ball. You don't have a lot of chemistry with him because you have a new one almost every single time you run a route. So we'll see if that's something that lingers on into his Michigan career. But I think just the fact that he was catching 100 balls a day from that jugs machine, that says that he knows he has a little bit of an issue, and he's willing to work his butt off to get to fix it. Next up is another athlete. This one is a 4-star athlete, Cody Jones. Number 14 athlete overall. He played defensive back, wide receiver. I believe he played some running back as well. So I really watching him, he had such great feet. He has pretty good speed. He cuts well, great acceleration, takes good angles. I could see him switching to offense in the event something didn't work out DB-wise. He is set up to play defense, though. You know, he's solid all around. He just doesn't have a lot of flaws in his game. The one that I did see again and again in a 7-on-7 tournament was he kept letting guys go on a slant. They would cross in front of his body, and it was almost like he failed to recognize it, or it's hard to tell because in this one camp that I saw that again and again, the focus of the camera was mainly on the right side of the screen. So, or the right side of the field, rather. So with that, you don't know what the rest of the defense is doing. So, it's really hard to tell. Were they in a zone? Was he actually passing that player off to whatever linebacker was playing or the safety? That's the part that you don't really know with that. I didn't see that same issue in a couple games that I watched, but I did see it in that 7-on-7 film. I think Cody's going to get a shot at special teams as early as next season, offensively and defensively. He runs the ball very well. I think he's got a good frame at 6 foot 180. He does run the 40 and 4.5 as a high school player. That's pretty good. If he can gain a little bit more speed, you could see him being a potential kick returner or punt returner at some point. There's just not a lot to fix with him. He's got a very high ceiling, and kind of reminds me of like a Leon Hall type as a cornerback. But we'll see how he does. I do like him as a player. And then last for today is Mr. Zeke Berry. I can't say enough good things about Zeke. I just love this guy. I mean, he's 6 foot 195. He's a 4-star cornerback. They have him listed as a DB. I think they're going to start Zeke off as a corner. Most people have him playing safety in college. I can see him. I really think they're going to start him off at corner, especially with a guy like Miles Pollard there. Miles, I think, is going to drop back to safety, and I could see Zeke moving to corner. And I don't know, who knows? Maybe you'll have Zeke on one side and Will Johnson on the other. That'd be a crazy good cornerback combination, in my opinion. Zeke played offense, defense, special teams, the whole shot. He was a running back. He caught the ball very well. He catches it with his hands. I mean, he's really good as an offensive player, but he's special when it comes to defense. You're talking about a guy, if he plays safety, I could see Zeke being, picture this style, picture Ed Reed. He's a ball hawk. He'll come up and lay just lay a huge hit on somebody. He can dive around and knock the ball loose. He's constantly trying to go for the fumble. You saw that. I saw that in several games. Actually, they played. Team played against. He played for De La Salle, and they played Derek Moore's team and lost. They did come back, but the only reason why they were even in that game was because of Zeke Berry. He was all over that field. So on defense, though, I think he's going to be a truly special player. And at 181 overall, I think he's underrated. This Zeke Berry, in my opinion, I think he's grossly underrated. He should have been let's say between 80 and 90 overall, in my opinion. That's how good Zeke Berry is. He is one of the most exciting players in this recruiting class for me. So after watching him play, hey, all I have to say is,
it's great to be a Michigan Wolverine. 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 It's great.
with that in, thanks for listening. I do appreciate it. Go follow my YouTube channel, Football Junkies. I have all the 22 recruits on there. I have already put on a few of the committed 2023 commits. I will not put up any recruits that have not committed. If they commit, I will make up a video and put it up there. If they decide to decommit and go someplace else, I will take it down. But those are the that's what I'll have on there. I will also be putting up some player highlights for Aiden Hutchinson, David Ajabo, Chris Hinton, all these draft eligible players for the NFL draft. For anybody that really gets into that, wanting to watch cut-ups, not player highlights, cut-ups, so it's every play Aiden's on the field, every play David's on the field, so on. But other than that, thank you for listening. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, you can always reach me on my YouTube page, or you can also find me on Twitter, FBJunkies_. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.